Good morning. God, what is better than having where I am? It's 9 a.m. I'm 1 second. Like you can't show this stuff on your stream, but I'm watching fights at like 20 a.m. I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada currently, and I'm stoked for Gaethje versus Khabib. Khabib's the greatest fighter, of all time in many ways. There will be a new greatest fighter of all time later. There have been the greatest of all time in the past. Khabib's the best. Um, and I love watching him fight. I deeply admire him, and I find great inspiration in Khabib Nurmagomedov. So the fact that I have put, man, it is very distracting to also have fights on, but it's very exciting. But the fact that I have put $50 of my hard-earned money onto the idea that Justin Gaethje will defeat Khabib inside of the distance does not in any way undermine my deep admiration and appreciation of Khabib Nurmagomedov. Also, people have like rabid fans. And I hope nobody that is like me, a fan of Khabib, is now angry at me for taking $50 of my hard earned money and deciding against my better judgment to place it on the idea that Justin Gaethje will win the fight inside the distance. I never bet. There are many good reasons for that. I want to talk about why. So let's hang for 15 minutes. I want to talk about why I believe that this is slightly more possible than the odds makers do, which is the art of betting. I want to also talk about betting itself. I want to talk about anticipating the future. I want to talk about how we see fighting. I just want to hang and chat because I'm super stoked. So let's start with the fact that I bet money. I do not do this. There are many reasons for this. Among them is that the future cannot be anticipated. It is unwritten. Excuse me, coffee's wonderful. The future is unwritten. We do not know the future. Also, many of the things that we believe are the important things about being able to predict a fight are not the important things about being able to predict a fight. And most of the important things about being able to forecast the winner of a fight or a football game or, an award or whatever, are things that we do not have access to. So to me, it's illogical. Also, the greatest bettors in the world, the greatest, are correct like 53, 54% of the time over a long period of time. That in and of itself will tell you that betting is about the art of understanding odds, statistics, likelihood, risk, things like that. That's betting. Understanding fighting or football or anything else is a completely separate thing, and they don't always mix. I'm going to read you something I find so fascinating. So there's this wonderful book. It's called Anti-Fragile by Taleb. He's written a bunch of brilliant books, including Black Swan. And Black Swan talks about the statistical likelihood of these unpredictable things like a global pandemic. I read it many years ago. It's absolutely brilliant. In Anti-Fragile, they reference something called the green lumber fallacy. And the green lumber fallacy talks about somebody who was an expert at how you can be an expert at lumber compared to an expert at trading stocks, and those two things aren't connected. In fact, the green lumber fallacy follows that a guy who was the best at trading green lumber actually thought it was wood painted green. He knew nothing about it. What he knew about was trading, right? And there are many, many examples of this. The main takeaway is that the real causative factors of success are most often hidden from us. We think that knowing the intricacies of green lumber are more important than keeping an eye on the order flow or the how trading takes place. We seduce ourselves into overestimating the impact of our intellectualism and then wonder why, quote, idiots are winning, right? But we're misdirecting knowledge. Me knowing a lot about fighting or having fought in a cage 9 times in my life and trained martial arts my whole life and analyzing thousands of fights in no way makes me a good bettor, because fighting cannot be predicted. There are thousands of variables, all of which will take place, most of which are unknown to us. So what we can do is guess. And that's my belief from a lifetime of studying things related to this and thinking in this way. Fighting, in fact, often people will say, if I correctly predict that Justin Gaethje would indeed win this fight inside the distance, people would take that as insight that I know a lot about fighting. Correctly predicting fights has no relationship to knowing anything about fighting. None whatsoever. I know that sounds crazy, but it really doesn't. It is about predictions, about the act of forecasting. To truly become knowledgeable about fighting is to ultimately know that predictions and forecasting are illogical. The more you see, the more you know. All of those unseen variables, as they said, the real causative factors of success are often hidden from us. Knowing about fighting does not help you predict fights. Knowing about fighting tells you fights are not predictable. That's what 40 years of study connected to I'm 50. So being a little kid, learning the things I learned, training martial arts, and then studying how people behave and how choices are made and how the future is, how we see and anticipate things, and studying that as part of my job. This is the conclusion that I have come to. To truly know fighting is to come to the realization that it cannot be predicted. So then why the hell did I put $50 on Justin Gaethje inside the distance? Again, I may say this many times. I deeply admire Khabib Nurmagomedov. Let's first touch on this. Losing is a part of life, growth, learning, becoming a great fighter, becoming a successful singer, dentist, YouTuber. I don't give a fuck. Failing and losing is an integral part of life. And it is, we are doing ourselves a deep disservice if we start to look at losing as bad, as failure, as bad, something to be ridiculed or something to not be discussed. How dare you, Robin? You love Khabib. How could you possibly say he will lose? I don't view losing as this, the consequences of loss as the something bad. I view it as part of the path, part of the process. And that is something that Justin Gaethje knows perfectly well. So what does Justin Gaethje know with certainty about the world? Unlike all of us, Justin Gaethje lived his life having literally never lost. If you look at he just didn't lose. There would have been the taste of it in wrestling and certain things coming up in his life, but he hadn't lost in forever. And he would have believed, he would have had the feelings in his body and mind that he cannot be defeated. He is unbeatable. No man can beat him. Why? Because the experience he would have is that when shit got real, he could break the other man. He would have believed and had the experience and felt the knowledge, Justin Gaethje would, and I'll get to Khabib in a moment. Justin Gaethje would have felt the knowledge, I cannot be beaten. They have not beaten me. When the shit got tough, I can go deeper. I can go further. I can push harder. I can smash until the wall breaks down, and I do it every time. And then against Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier, 2 fights in a row, he could not. Where was he incorrect? He wasn't incorrect about himself. The only error Justin Gaethje made in the belief that he could not lose was believing that no one else was like him. This intensity, fire, desire, will, toughness, grit, that he thought he was the only one, right? He believed, he may have believed he was the only one. And evidence, history taught him that was so. That when the shit got bad, he would be the one standing until he met Eddie and Dustin, and he realized there were more like him. So what would Justin Gaethje have learned from those 2 losses? No man is unbeatable. The feeling of being unbeatable is an illusion. And there are others on the night that can match your will and heart and guts and intensity. What is that? That's truth. You know what? One of my favorite sayings or things they say, about fighting and about things like this, the moment of truth. All right, guys, here it is, the moment of truth. We've heard that a bunch of times, but think about it. That's what it is. That's what it is. It's the fucking moment of truth. Justin Gaethje believed he could not be beaten, but the truth is he could. The truth is he could. Now he knows that. Khabib is where and this is not, these are the interesting aspects of fighting. None of this is definite, or uh, any evidence that I will win $200 with my $50. None of this is. And in fact, the reason I typically don't bet is because all of these things may not matter at all if one guy's foot slips when the other guy throws a thing, or if one guy is getting ready for something, but some other thing happens. In the dynamic push and pull feedback loop of orienting and observing and gathering data and then expressing yourself, one wrong move and people are asleep. And if you did the whole thing over again 6 more times, the other guy might have won 5. But the predictions and being right or wrong is literally meaningless. It in no way represents knowledge about the thing, because these things cannot be predicted. But the experience, the truth of knowledge, the truth of facts, the truth of reality, Justin Gaethje knows the reality. All men can be beaten. He believed he couldn't. He could. He's not one of. He's not. His mistake was that he thought he was different than all other men. Khabib also may believe this. I believe that Khabib is different than all of us. Khabib's better at 1,000 things. He's better able to use what he is for many tools, for winning, for leadership, for inspiring other people, for fighting, for all of these things. Khabib's special. And there's 2 special humans fighting. So why did, again, this is what I do. Please never, well, actually do whatever you want. But if you're ever like, God, Robin's just meandering, this is what I do. This is what I do. So if you don't like it, then you got the wrong guy. But the meandering takes you to different thoughts and different ideas. But so again, why on earth would I sit there and take $50 of my hard-earned money when I know for a fact that forecasting is illogical? Based on the more knowledge you know, the more you see all the things that the forecasters are not seeing, and then you understand why the greatest bettors in the world are correct for 54% of the time. Right? Because it's illogical. So why would I do it? Well, there's a number of things that come together in this time, and they all relate to Gaethje. Bear in mind, 2 humans fight each other. You know how many takedown defenses and distance managements and low kicks fight each other? None. You know how many humans fight each other? 2 do. 2 human beings. Those human beings are thinking, feeling, processing humans just like you. They've changed the way they think and operate in the world, but they are humans. They're just people. This is a dynamic between all fights between the trained brains and expressed through the bodies, the tissues of 2 humans. And how the 2 match up mentally, physically, technically, all of these things make what the fight is. That's how the fight exists. Again, it doesn't matter how we categorize it ourselves back in the world, creating our own language, takedown defense versus, distance management and yada, yada, yada. Volume, the shit we say has really nothing to do with the truth of what's happening. We just do it because this is what people do. We ritualistically say things, and some of us like it, some of us don't. Some of us say it, some of us listen to it, some of us tweet about it. This is what we do. But the fight doesn't give a fuck what we think. The fight is a dynamic happening in real time between the trained brains expressed through the tissues of 2 human beings that have spent a lifetime preparing for this moment. So how can you examine that dynamic? We try, this guy's a good kicker, this guy's a good puncher, this guy's got great wrestling. We give it these categories, but it's just bullshit. It's just humans trying to make sense of magic, right? That's what we're doing here. So we try to examine what you can see in Justin Gaethje right now, and this is usually where you. So again, let me set this table for you. I decided to spend $50, despite the fact that I never do, and despite the fact that I know that the dynamic between 2 geniuses is almost impossible to actually accurately predict. What I can see is this rare occasion where you look and Justin Gaethje shows the attributes and the physical and mental and body language and speaking and the building blocks that he can have his best performance. That's literally one of the reasons that I'm like, yeah, let's spend $50. Everything about Justin Gaethje right now says that he can have his best performance. So 1. 2, his best performance contains a collection of skills and abilities and attributes that have the potential to defeat the best fighter in the world on one night. So again, we're looking at Khabib's the best, can't be beaten, very close to not being beaten. All humans can be beaten. We're assuming Khabib is going to be his best because that's how we have to do it. I would never, I'm unwilling to anticipate someone being less than their best when they are the greatest, and their evidence says that. If on some night Khabib has a quote bad night, like Eddie Alvarez had against Conor McGregor, you even then still have to credit it. Did Eddie have an off night, or was it because of how good Conor was that night? And how did that relationship push and pull the mind and the freedom to fight? Right. So same thing. You have to go in and say Khabib will be genius. If Khabib's genius, can he be beaten? Well, we just decided based on Gaethje's own experience that all men can be beaten, even the greatest, because Justin Gaethje had that experience himself personally. So he goes in and says, this guy will be his best, but even his best can be beaten. So now we start with that position and we say, does Justin Gaethje, the human, have the capacity to do the things that could, on Justin's best night, to do the things that could potentially defeat the best fighter in the world? And we think yes. We look at it. When he hits somebody, often they go to sleep. 1, 2, 3 clean shots, he can put people to sleep. He can destroy people's legs. He has the ability to grapple. He wants to have his feet on the ground. He has the history of physical combat training to keep his feet on the ground, to get himself back up into a standing position where he can damage somebody. So he has the building blocks, and he's shown it. He's fought at the highest level. He has had wins against the best people. He has shown that he may have the necessary skills, attributes, and tools to defeat the best fighter in the world if he's at his best. Okay. So then we have to say, and if he isn't, and he or anybody else will not defeat Khabib. They will not. Khabib's too good. Now, we take into account, again, this is why forecasting makes no sense. We take into account the fact that some unknown aspect of Khabib's world could make him not at his best. And we theorize, saying, oh, his father passed away. That could also inspire him deeply, right? It could be harmful. It could be great. And the stronger the mind, the more you can compartmentalize it in ways that it's valuable, as well as focus it in ways that it's helpful and can in fact galvanize you. So, but some unknown thing. Maybe Khabib injures himself in the back and makes the decision, I'm going to go and do it. It's something we don't know, but we don't know about those, so we can't take that into account. You can't predict. Turns out Khabib made 2 things and then his knee went. Oh, we'd heard he had an injured knee. And Justin Gaethje wins inside the distance. See, I was right. It's just bullshit, right? Like the truth of the depth of these things is so much more interesting than the surface level bullshit that we all say and do. I have the fight on right now. Right now, it's talking in between. These are my friends that are working, many of them, and I do that job often. I've commentated 500 shows in the world. We say a lot of bullshit stuff often because there's the time constraints. Oh my God, he's got crazy power. Now, if we had an hour, we were sitting on Joe's podcast or somewhere, we could actually discuss what that is and why that's not real. Why we had to lie, why we had to phrase something in a way that wasn't true. But right here, we just see it and we start to think that way. Oh, he's a great wrestler. He's a great striker. If he can keep it standing, blah, blah, blah. We've been saying that for fucking 20 years. Is that all we're ever going to say? We can't, right? We have to look deeper. So now we decide Justin Gaethje does have the capacity that on his best night, he could potentially defeat Khabib. Again, I can't say Justin Gaethje is going to win or Khabib's going to win because nobody knows the future, and past performance is not always a predictor of future performances. That's another thing. One of them just tonight, oh, fuck, they just couldn't do it. And sometimes you see that. Anthony Johnson. And I said, what happened on this night? He said, I don't know, man. I just wasn't on. It was so weird. Now, so that brings us to the other one. Khabib is almost unbeatable, but Justin knows firsthand from his own experience, all humans can be beaten, but he's the best. The only way we can beat him is if we're on. If we're on and we have our best night, do we have the puzzle of attributes and skills and tactics and history and mindset to be able to defeat him? We think maybe he does. Then we go to, What is the likelihood that he will perform at his best? So we're simplifying this in many ways. Sounds real complicated. I'm babbling. I'm talking for a long time about in all different directions, but in a way, we are simplifying it. Can all men can be beaten, even the greatest. Skills are there to potentially do it as skills and attributes. If he was on his best, now we're at what is the likelihood he is on his best? And this is where you look at it and go, wow, this guy could beat him tonight. And I believe, although he may or may not, the odds makers are incorrectly estimating the likelihood. And that's what betting is. I have friends that are great bettors, friends that do it as an art form, and that's their skill. Is not to say, I know this guy's going to win by submission. It's because he defeated three other guys and Khabib crushed Poirier. Poirier beat Dustin. Therefore, let's talk about that for a second. A beats B, B beats C, C beats A. We see it all the fucking time, right? All the time. All the time. Because it is a dynamic between humans, and every fight is a unique experience. Every fight is a unique experience, not just a matchup, but the individuals. Two fighters, rematches, completely different fights. Two individuals, different stages of their life, completely different fights. A defeats B, B defeats C, C defeats A. We see it all the time. So if you are making bets based on that, sometimes you might win. And in fact, the statistics might say if you just go according to wins and losses and records, you'll be right 52% of the time for a 3-year period. If that's true, fucking bet. If you like betting, that's the way you do it. You don't want to start thinking about all this other shit. So it will be a distraction from the thing that will get you the correct time 52% of the time. You're not trying to be an expert at fighting. I'm not trying to be an expert at betting. And we all do it because we don't know what else to do. Hey, man, who you got? That's also a fun game of saying who you're with. I like that. I like that, who you with. It's like, fuck, I'm kind of with Khabib. You know, like I love both of these guys. I can't wait for the fight. But who you with, who you got, who you cheering for, who do you love? Right? I love that. That to me makes sense. Who is going to win this fight? We don't fucking know. And even if we get it right, it doesn't mean we're brilliant. It doesn't mean we know anything about fighting. As I said, to truly understand fighting, the people who know the most about fighting will tell you with absolute certainty that there is no absolute certainty. That sounds funny, but it's true. So now, what's the evidence that Justin Gaethje has the ability, or looks like he may perform at his best? Him performing at his best potentially has the skills to defeat the best fighter in the world, because all men can be defeated, even the greatest. That's the key here. That's why you're like, holy fuck, this guy actually could do it. And I will add, I've only ever made one bet ever in my life. That was Holly Holm to defeat Ronda Rousey. There's something not present here that was present there. All the same things were present. Holly does have the skills to defeat this undefeated fighter if she's on her best. Much of what you're seeing about her says she could be on her best. The thing that is missing is on that. You could also look and go, there's a lot of evidence that Ronda Rousey will not be at her best. A lot of evidence in her life, in her performance, in her preparation, in the reflection of her body that says the amount of work she did compared to other fights. Much was present. This one, none of that's present. Khabib looks like the best in the world. So now we're asking Justin Gaethje to defeat the best in the world. Does he have the skills and attributes to potentially do it? Yes, he does. What would have to happen? He'd have to be at his best. What's the likelihood he'll be at his best? And that's where we are. From the day when he lost, and you talk to him, you watch his behavior, you see interviews, you see coaching, you see the aspects. The goal became, and literally this is the turning point in the road. We've lost 2 fights that were fight of the night, and we're making lots of money. Justin Gaethje made a lot of money, made hundreds of thousands of dollars per fight before he was in the UFC. Then he gets a lot of money to fight in the UFC, and he's bonused in almost every one. We could go through life being the most exciting fighter. This is Justin Gaethje. Could go through life being the most exciting fighter in the world, making $600,000 a fight. $500,000 plus the 50 every night, sometimes 250s, and the extra backroom bonuses that he gets. But Justin Gaethje, after those losses, would have had to make the decision, is that where I'm going? Because if it is, we'll just carry on. Or do I truly want to become the best fighter in the world? And by all accounts, that's the decision he made. And that required change. It required change. And he fights different now. It's very subtle, but if you're looking for it, it isn't just, and I haven't yet, it's going to take me time still to find the right way to explain this, but we obsess about to a real detriment, to a real disservice to fighters. We obsess about the techniques. And when you start to watch something, the process of learning about it goes through who are the fighters, who are the rankings, what's next for this guy. Then later it's like, oh, how do you check a kick? Oh, look, he got double leg takedown. Over time, you start to see that the techniques actually are just tools, right? They're just tools. We overstate the tool. It'd be like, imagine if I was a music analyst and I was like, oh my God, Prince has an unbelievable guitar. He's got phenomenal strings on it. That his amplifier is sick. Like, that's what we're doing. Oh, amazing double leg takedown. It wasn't an amazing double leg takedown. That's the same thing Khabib's been doing since he was a little kid. Khabib's double leg takedown or whatever isn't amazing. Khabib, the human, is amazing. Using a very simple tool better than other people. Prince's guitar isn't amazing. Prince is using a very simple tool better than other people. And so we obsess about that. But so when I say that Justin Gaethje uses patience, uses fake attacks and subterfuge and stuff to get somebody, moves back, pushes and pulls, draws, has footwork that floats out and around, those are just tools. It isn't Gaethje's choice of tool, paintbrush or stick, drumstick or brush, whatever. That's not what it is. It's Gaethje's mind, Gaethje's belief system, Gaethje's process. And this is true of Khabib and every other great. It's their strategy, the way, their comfort, their knowing of themselves. That's what changed. Justin Gaethje could always step back and throw a hook. Justin Gaethje could always throw a punch, and instead of throwing 3 more punches and smashing him against the cage, he could always step back and curve around. We didn't teach him new skills. We taught him to think different. He taught himself to think different, right? And it's super important. We see Justin Gaethje's fight before Eddie. And then we see him fight after. And we're like, oh, he's added a new wrinkle to his game. Now the footwork has improved. Now he's using the hooks from distance, striking and backing up, manipulating the gap. I say all these things. We all do. But what really changed? His fucking thinking. His thinking. He could always manipulate the gap. He could always float out of, he could always manage the distance. That's fucking rudimentary shit. They're just tools. His thinking, his processing, his interaction with the flow, his interaction with the life. This fighting is alive. It's a living, dynamic system. And the choices you make isn't based on what you have. It's not like he didn't used to have these skills. He had them. He didn't use them. He had these tools. They stayed in his drawer. Justin Gaethje's thinking changed. His thinking changed because it had to change. It had to change because he wanted to become a fighter that could win fights like this. Really interesting to me. I broke down a whole bunch of his fights and Khabib's fights. I still analyze UFC in Canada on television, but the nature of that company, they don't allow you to share these things internationally, right? So I've done a lot of this work. If you're outside of Canada, you may not have seen it. But there are things he did against Tony Ferguson. Imagine this. And this is something, again, it does connect to something that I saw when Holly was going to fight Ronda, but there's hundreds of examples. Don't connect these two. The only connection between these two is I happen to bet on both of them. There's thousands of fights that connect in this way, right? And it's not man or woman or big heavyweight or lightweight. These are just things, right? But Gaethje, when he fought Tony, was actually fighting on some small levels. He was dress rehearsing Khabib. And I know they're not at all the same fighter, which I don't think of that. The fight was customized for Tony Ferguson, but choices that he made to strike back up, to force distance, to not get too close, that wasn't because he thought Ferguson was difficult there. That was just practice hitting and moving, drawing into the gap. Even look at Cowboy Cerrone. He hurts him backing up, which is great. That's going to make total sense. Fighting a guy who's always trying to move forward, aggressively trying to grab you. And then as he hurts him and he picks him up, and Cowboy is bent over and he starts striking here. I froze that, and that bent over hurt Cowboy. And of course he's hurt. He's not going to wrestle him here. It's still a human body in the exact same position that hot, and Justin's talked about it too, creating a kill zone. That kill zone is anytime I'm somewhere here, I'm getting hit from different angles. All of that's great, right? All of that's great. It all makes sense. And it's like, oh, even the greatest could be beaten, but it would take the right collection of skills. Maybe he has that. He'd have to be at his best. Maybe he could be. Evidence has shown that his path, even chucking that belt, no, I'll take the real one. That's a guy not sitting there. He didn't accomplish his goal yet. Great, we won the fight. That's a part of the process, but my goal is not accomplished. My goal will be to defeat the best and be the real champion. That there wasn't a statement for us to go, wow, isn't that amazing that that Gaethje, like, look at him, look at the statement he made. He isn't making a statement. That was literally him living his process. That right there. Then talking about, I want to find my equal. I want to be pushed. Talking about even, and again, you cannot bank on people's words, because a fighter, like anybody, has a million things they could possibly be saying something untruthful for. Politician, fighter, your dentist, fucking anybody. There's a lot of reasons they could say something not the truth. You can't assume that speaking the truth. He could be trying to say something to make Khabib think a thing. He could be trying to say something to make his bosses think a thing. He could try to make us think a thing. He could try to sell pay-per-views. There's money. There's all kinds of things. But so we take that into account. But then when we look at his behavior is that of somebody thinking actively. I hurt. I dish out damage. I be aggressive. It's not, I'm going to stop the takedown. It's not, and I say crazy shit. I realize that. A lot of the stuff I say sounds real crazy. And hey, you'd be crazy too if you spent a lot of time continuing to peel layers in search of truth. And I've said this to, like, Mike Brown or Daniel Cormier, and at times they'll pause and be like, holy fuck, yeah, that's true. And then they'll go on saying it. Takedown defense. Dan will say it. Mike Brown said it to me one night, even though 4 months earlier, me and Mike Brown had a conversation that in wrestling, there is no such thing as takedown defense. In the art of wrestling, he would never, train somebody to stop you from taking them down. Now, coming up, as an amateur, as like a low level fighter on the circuits I fought, you would take a baby fighter and say, hey, let's try to defend this takedown. But in reality, takedown defense is not a concept, right? We don't assign ourselves a prevent. That's incorrect. We assign ourselves I will force this to stand. I will choose the thing. I will wrestle you to your feet. I will wrestle you into the position I want. I will look to reverse you. I will look to hurt you. I will look to improve my position. All these active, goal. When George St. Pierre said his groin was pulled, the coach said, hit him with your groin. He didn't say, well, protect yourself, defend. Active. And even stop him from taking you down. That's wrong. Force this fight to the feet. Wrestle him into a standing position. Defend the takedown is an incorrect thing. And yes, the greatest wrestlers in the world, when they're talking about fighting, say it. But if you sat down with them in this environment where they didn't have to say it in 5 seconds on a television broadcast, and I talked to them, Mike is one example I use because I respect him so deeply. And he's like, yeah, you're right. There's no such thing as takedown defense. Right. Yeah. In wrestling, nobody scores that. Nobody says that. You wrestle to improve wherever you are. Now we're in fighting, that particular arena, we have a goal, right? And the goal isn't pin him. The goal is put it where we want it, but it's still wrestling offensively. I will wrestle you to your feet and I will wrestle you to space. I will wrestle you up. There's no such thing as takedown defense, right? So, and in reality, it's just something we make up to say on TV. We say it because it sounds good and it makes it sound like a sport. And sports have a language. But in truth, if you choose to only have one possible prevent goal, stop him from taking you down, nobody trains their fighters to stop someone from taking. No one good, nobody on the top of their game, nobody ever says, we're going to stop the takedown. They say, we're going to maintain space. We're going to separate from him. We're going to fight our way to our feet. We're going to wrestle him to the feet. We don't go to prevent, right? And Justin ain't doing that. Now, of course, Khabib's the greatest, and he has his goals too, right? That's, again, why all of this is just fun. All of this is just humans having fun, talking. There's nothing on earth right now and to our detriment, that humans are doing more than expressing our opinions as quickly as possible with as little thought as possible and then fighting over it. We've been taught to do it by politics and sports television. We do it. It's what we're doing. And that's okay. But if you really want, but remember that it's just fun. You shouldn't be fighting with somebody. Oh, bro, you got it wrong. Yeah, see, I knew Khabib would lose. Or see, Justin was bullshit. Hype train derailed. You can do anything you like, but you're not enhancing your life, I don't believe, by doing all of that, right? So what are we doing here? I'm just fucking stoked for fighting, and I can't believe like a couple hundred people wanted to hang out with me while I expressed my thoughts on this. I know my thinking is different, and I think that's good. I know not everybody likes my thinking. That's good too, because one, some of them just will go somewhere else, and some of them end up like being super negative, which I don't like to be super combative or negative or create conflict, but they'll do it for me. They'll be like, ah, guy's full of shit. There's something called imposter syndrome. If somebody hasn't spent 100,000 hours learning something, or 120,000 in a lifetime learning something, they have no idea what it could be like to have done that, and how potentially that would create a difference in how they saw the world. So they assume that if they were sitting at a camera and talking to a bunch of people, they assume that if they were having this kind of conversation, that they'd just be making shit up, right? They make that assumption. But if they spent many thousands and then tens of thousands of hours looking at something, they would see things differently. And that's why different people who have done that offer ideas that might be interesting to some people. But like I said, when some people like fucking hate my shit, it's really valuable for me. When they like leave a comment, tweet it out, or start threads on things about how I'm crazy, it's really beneficial. They have also no. There's something about loving to hate things that we humans are doing right now. It's a weird time, right? We got unlimited things we can view, read, listen to, watch, and very limited time. So if you actually are spending your time on something you think is either bullshit or like not good or you hate it, that's not really sane. But you can go back and look and go, maybe there is something about disliking this. A lot of people, apparently Rush Limbaugh, I don't know his stuff. I don't know him, but he's very popular. Apparently that like 20% of his audience, like, or 30% of us hates him. And then the rest are bad at them. I don't know what he does exactly, but I was reading that somewhere, and he, that's powerful. It's really important. So, anyways, so people think my shit's stupid. That's great. It's only the second bet I've ever placed. And this I thought was really interesting. On Twitter, I just said, hey, I've only ever made two bets. I bet Holly Holm to knock out Ronda Rousey, and there was something I said to. Jay Glazer forced me to make a prediction on Nemkov versus Ryan Bader, and I said he was going to knock him out in the second round, and then he did, and then Jay's like, I'm not messing with you, which is cool. Jay's cool, but I was like, it's just the statistical likelihood is you'll be right sometimes and you'll be wrong sometimes. That's why the best bettors in the world are right 54% of the time. But yes, so I put that out, and then like 15, 20 people of the 500 who shared or liked or whatever were like, this means something. So Robin Black says, I've only ever made two bets. Once was Holly Holm to knock out by KO, and once is Justin Gaethje inside the distance. And people are like, this means something. It's like, all it means is one guy allowed his brain to default to, some choice or, anticipation or prediction or opinion about the future. That's all that means. So people are like, this means, it doesn't mean anything. It means one human being's brain allowed itself. So we automatically, especially now, we've been taught to, we automatically form opinions, draw conclusions, right? And project things. We're doing that automatically now. And people will be like, I have a right to an opinion. Yes, you do. You do. You have a right to an opinion. But watch out for when they keep enforcing you and encouraging you to, yeah, that's right. I know that they're trapping you. And I don't mean they like some cabal. I just mean like, the world around us, our civilization. It's trapping you. The most powerful breakthroughs in anything come from resisting the instinct to form an opinion. I've talked about this before, but it's called Negative capability. After you get off here, if you Google it, negative capability. Humans are very fragile. Our egos are fragile. We need to know things, right? We need to predict how's the housing market is going to go, whatever, like whatever the thing is. You can't predict the fucking global pandemic. On March 3rd, people were like, "Oh yeah, the housing market's going to do this, and like that this team is going to win the Olympics." There's no fucking Olympics. There's no the housing market's not doing what you thought. All those things unpredictable, right? And I started this talking about Nassim Taleb. His book Black Swan talks about how our illusion is that a global pandemic is rare and unpredictable. It's not. Every 100 years, in the grand scheme of life, that's like beep. It's like a tiny little bit. These things are, there's an unpredictability to everything. But like I said, when Robin Black tweets a thing and says, "This is only the second bet I've ever made," I bet on Gaethje inside the distance. That means something. It means one guy failed. We have the ability to resist forming an opinion, and it's fucking powerful. All the best things in my life over the last few years have come from working on this skill, resisting the desire to the natural knee-jerk, human nature of forming an opinion. Because if you resist that for as long as possible, eventually you have to make choices. Of course, you can't just sit around pontificating, but of course you do. But the longer you can do it, and the more you can practice this as a skill, like meditation or mindfulness, the more you can practice this as a skill, the more it opens up your life. Many of the new things you learn will be because of that. I don't care what you know. You, me, anyone. I don't care what anyone knows. If they gathered more information, they would know more. If they gathered more information, they would think differently. If you form an opinion or draw a conclusion, you now are looking only down that corridor. And I mean, fucking people, there are people that still think astrology is real. Astronomy is real. One day, astronomy, in 500 years in the future, astronomy will look ridiculous. It will. You know, right now, when we go back and watch people, talk about fighting, fucking the weather, 20 years, it looks ridiculous. And it will 20 years in the future again. But the only way you'll have access to that information is if you don't look at what you know right now as a law of nature. Biggest failing when we're talking about anything, I'll use fighting because that's my paradigm, is thinking things are set. Always keep your hands up. Bullshit. Why would you keep your hands up? You better put your hands up or the guy will punch you. Well, what if I want you to punch me? I'll put my hands down so I can draw a punch, and then I'll do something. I'll manipulate you because you believe I should always have my hands up or you'll hit me. Always put your foot on the outside. Man, I know Lomachenko just lost in a great fight. I love both those guys so much. So great, so modern, right? But, that guy always put your lead foot on the outside to set up. What a load of shit. Whoever believed that, like, that's just absolute horseshit. That's a novice truth. At the top level, that's not fucking true. Always put your lead foot on the outside against the southpaw. There's 1,000 reasons to put your foot on the inside, including if I put my foot on the inside and I offer you the outside. Why? You now have a direct line with your power hand. Great. So if I want you to throw your power hand, I put my foot on the inside. I offer you the outside line, and I wait for your fucking power hand, and then I counter you. Because you've become predictable. You believe some bullshit to be true. And so therefore you think you now have an advantage, but I have the advantage because I know what you believe, right? This is life. We learn these things by resisting forming an opinion. I've said this before, but Einstein theory of relativity, he sat, and it's very uncomfortable at first to not to form an opinion. Very uncomfortable. But it's a superpower. It's a superpower of knowledge, of learning, of continued growth, not forming an opinion. So this is my failing, that I spent $50 forming an opinion. This is a great failing of mine, but it's an experiment too. And it's just something different, trying to loosen up a bit. You know what I mean? Not necessarily that that's my problem either, clearly, but I'm trying to loosen up a bit. And that is me just playing, exploring. Oh, cool. Let's see what happens. Right. That was, this is part of it. But if I'm right, please remind me on Monday or Sunday to make a video denouncing the fact that I knew what was going to happen. Because I didn't. I don't know what's going to happen. No idea what's going to happen. There's, of all the potential things that could happen, most of them we can't think about. Also, why do I tell people, if you're a bettor even, and hey, people should do what they want. They don't have to take my advice. But why do I say, if you think somebody should have the ability to finish the fight, just say inside the distance? How many times you see a guy drop a guy and then choke him? How many times you see like doctor stoppage after a guy's like literally about to finish him? Like different, you can't, it's hard enough to try to educated guess, who may win. Never mind, by armbar. Like, although at times, there are certain things that are in play, and it's up to you. Do your thing, have some fun, live your life, right? You don't need, we don't need to get all up each other's ass about this. The other thing is, if I'm right, don't tell people, if you see anybody do it, tell them, don't fucking celebrate that. That was a shot in the dark. In my video, I explain it. And if I'm wrong and you feel like making fun of me, go ahead. That's you. That's your life. We all get to do the shit we want to do, right? We all get to do what we want to do. Last thought, as I say that, we all get to do the shit we want to do. You should do it your own way. We fall into these things. The greatest happiness in my life right now is because I'm doing my thing my way, the way I would have dreamed to do it. I've got a Fight Secrets coming out on Bellator YouTube this week. I had one a couple of weeks ago about Michael Venom Page. These are the things that I wanted to do. When I was at different times, I've been in little bits of stream of different fight leagues. And then, there's a certain suit in a certain way, in certain language, and a certain code. To me, most of the code we're using, and I'm not any disrespect to anybody, it's not intended that way. Most of it's astrology, right? Astronomy is the real shit. We're sitting around, we're doing astrology with fighting. Oh, he's got crazy knockout power in both hands. This guy's got phenomenal distance management. If you can get the low kick going, that's astrology. That's not astronomy. It's not science. It's fun. It's fun. The danger is we're doing this with science and with politics and with government and with scary shit and with military. We're speaking in code, and we're all kind of getting used to it like it's okay. Reality is reality. The truth is, fucking Khabib could just take this guy down, manhandle him, smash him. That's 100% true. Khabib could, suggest the takedown and just throw a punch over top and fucking knock Justin out. We'd all be like, oh my, and then we'd default to the narrative. Oh, Khabib's much improved striking. It's just fucking what happened, right? Our narratives, we default to these narratives, and I don't, and it makes me so fucking happy we live in a world where we can just go and fucking talk about it. We can just go talk for real. There's no law that says that if you want to talk about football, you have to talk the way that people have talked about football for 40 fucking years. There's no law that says if you want to talk about for or against Donald Trump, that you have to do it the way that fucking MSNBC or Fox does it. There's no law that says we have to say striker versus grappler in a stylistic matchup. If Justin Gaethje can keep it on the feet and touch him up with his jab, but if Khabib, the greatest wrestler of all time, gets him down, gets that Dagestani wrist lock, I don't have to do any of that shit because that shit's not real. That shit's for entertainment, and it's fun. It's fun. But should I go? There's like 100 people hanging out. Let's take some questions. Very difficult for me, and my face is going to get real close, but let's try to take a couple of questions. Holy fuck, we've been here for 48 minutes. Oh, man. Why don't we do this? You guys watching the fights? Let's take a look at – so what I've got is Alvey and Young. So this is an example. I don't know if you got the fights on TV, but Alvey is a southpaw. So let's watch. And they're like, never move into the power hand. Alvey is literally moving towards Jung's power hand, right? He's literally moving towards it. And we'd be like, Alvey's like making a mistake. If Alvey gets knocked out by the power hand, people would say, he made a mistake, he moved into the power hand. He's moving into the power hand to draw those weapons. Fucking Alistair Overeem does it all the time. So you're standing orthodox. And if he gets knocked out, it just failed. It wasn't wrong. He didn't make a mistake. He made a bet that failed. He's moving, always moving towards that right hand. Why is he doing that? So if you're right-handed and I'm a southpaw and I keep moving into your power hand, what am I doing? I'm saying to you, throw your right hand or your right foot or your right elbow or your right knee. right? That's what I'm saying. So what's that better than? Throw anything. I've now reduced all of your menu to half. So if I get really good at dealing with that half menu instead of the whole menu, now I get good at countering your right hand, countering your right kick, countering your right knee. And that becomes my game. I go in and I draw your shit and I counter you. Oh, and that's just what he did. That's literally just what he did right there. And now he goes and he goes the other way. Why? So when people say never move into the power hand of your opponent, you can't never do anything. Or you so what would that mean? Always move to your right. You can't always do anything. You're deep shit if you always do anything. So uh, Albi's doing that too. Keeps moving towards the power hand of his opponent in hopes to draw out limiting him to a half menu in hopes to draw those weapons out and counter them. Can't do that all night. So he moves the other direction. Mix up stance like I can't. Shit. This is the real downside. My vision is starting to betray me at my old age. I spent the whole last season. Sorry, I can't read it, guys. Sorry. So, and now Jung's switching his stance up, and Jung throws the left, trying to, of course, pull in instead of being a half menu, is adding the other menu items that were not there. And it's a cool fight, though. This right here, I don't hope you guys are watching it. This right here is an exact dynamic. And of course, often, and we do our jobs the way we think we have to do them. So we say, watch the right outside front foot. If you can put that, he's going to line. Well, that's not true. And now we've told you that that's true. And now you believe that's true. This is also why, when we become armchair analysts and we don't like play football or fight or do politics and we're like a political analyst, or you don't know the real subtleties. You don't know what it feels like. You don't know what's really happening. You start to believe the shit that's said to you. Why would Joe Rogan, a brilliant man, or Daniel Cormier lie about the front foot position? They're not lying. They have only limited time. In those limited time, they can only offer sound bites. Those sound bites, after said by brilliant people, start to become belief systems. They start to become doctrines. People think that's true. It's not fucking true, right? As soon as you start thinking these things are true, you start to limit yourself. What if you always moved? Oh shit! I just got a text about training. I gotta go. Mukai Moromo, brilliant martial artist. Also, Shane Campbell. I've been training with these guys, doing privates. He just said, "See you at noon." I must have fucked up and booked it wrong. So I gotta go. Justin Gaethje, inside the distance. Don't bet your money on anything I ever say. Fighting is a dynamic system, ever changing in the moments, and it cannot be properly forecasted. But have some fun and enjoy the hostilities, my friends.